Imagine this. You are in a relationship. It could be love, friendship, or even family. On the surface, everything seems fine. The usual greetings, the ordinary smiles, no warning signs. And then, one morning, they vanish. No text, no goodbye, no explanation, as if they never existed in your life. And the part that haunts you most, they will never come back. In that moment, your mind splits apart. What happened? What did I do wrong? But the truth, as Carl Jung once wrote, does not lie on the surface. It hides deep within the unconscious mechanism, a mechanism he called psychological emergency surgery. Jung discovered that there are people who are extraordinarily sensitive empaths. They can endure, tolerate, and love without limits. They can carry wounds for months, even years. But then, in a single moment, the subconscious intervenes. It flips the switch, cuts the cord, and forces them to disappear in order to survive. This is not weakness. This is self-rescue. Just like when your hand touches fire, your body pulls it back instantly, no explanation needed. Sounds familiar? If you have ever walked away in silence, leave a comment right now. I disappeared to survive. Because in today's video, I will show you the real reason empaths vanish and why that disappearance is not cruelty, but the final whisper of the unconscious. Save yourself before it's too late. Carl Jung once told the story of a particular patient. On the outside, she seemed completely normal, gentle, caring, and patient, to the point where everyone believed nothing could ever make her leave her relationship. But in the darkness of her dreams, another story was being written. She often found herself submerged in murky water, her body heavy, unable to rise. On some nights, she was trapped inside burning buildings, running endlessly but never finding an exit. And sometimes, she carried massive stones on her back, so heavy that each step was a torment. Jung realized these dreams were not random. They were urgent bulletins from the unconscious. While her conscious mind kept smiling, kept making excuses. He's just tired. She probably didn't mean to hurt me. The unconscious was quietly recording every scratch, every contemptuous glance, every small manipulation that seemed harmless. For 6 months, that hidden alarm system patiently gathered data, until one morning, without a fight, without a drop spilling over the glass, without a dramatic breakup, she disappeared. Jung called this phenomenon psychic emergency surgery. When the conscious mind is helpless, the unconscious takes over. It cuts the relationship like a cold surgeon, wielding a scalpel to remove a tumor, even though the surgery leaves a scar. Pause for a moment. Have you ever had recurring dreams? Have you ever woken up in the middle of the night with a sense of suffocation, as if your mind was screaming, "This place isn't safe"? If you've ever felt that, comment, "I heard the whisper." Because sometimes, your body and your dreams know the truth before your mind dares to admit it. What shook Jung the most was the finality of this phenomenon. Once the unconscious has decided, the door closes forever, not out of hatred, not out of indifference, but because the mind has classified that relationship as a deadly zone. Going back means spiritual death. For the one left behind, it feels like a bolt of lightning out of a clear sky. We were fine, why would this happen? But for the empath, that act is anything but sudden. It's the result of hundreds of ignored signals, of years in which the unconscious had been silently calling for help. Imagine walking into a house, and in a dark corner, an alarm is ringing softly. The sound is so faint, you don't hear it. But each day it grows louder, until suddenly the sprinkler system bursts open. The red lights flash continuously. You panic. Why so sudden? But in reality, the house had been smoldering for a long time. That is exactly how the empath's unconscious works. It gives time, it waits for change, it registers every pain. But once the limit is crossed, it no longer negotiates. It acts only to save life. And that disappearance, however cold, is the unconscious's final message. If I stay, I will die inside. If I leave, at least I have a chance to survive. If you've ever found yourself leaving a relationship wordlessly, without drama, only silence, right, survival mode. And if you're in a relationship where your body and dreams keep whispering warnings, comment, I hear it now. Because very likely, the unconscious is trying to save you before it's too late. Jung once said that the disappearance of an empath is never an impulsive decision. It does not come from a sudden argument, nor from a single drop spilling over the glass. It is an entire silent process, like a storm gathering quietly from pale clouds, slowly growing into a thunderous tempest. The first stage is the silent alarm. Empaths have an unusually sharp intuition. They sense the subtle changes others often overlook. An indifferent glance, a tone laced with sarcasm, a trace of disrespect hidden behind a smile. Their conscious mind brushes it off, convincing itself they are just being too sensitive. But the unconscious works differently. It records everything, like an invisible diary. And soon, those signals begin to surface in dreams, a recurring nightmare, the sensation of falling into an abyss, or chaotic visions that jolt them awake at night. The body speaks too. Exhaustion, chronic tension, restless nights with no explanation. Yet on the surface, they keep smiling, keep enduring. Then comes the second stage, psychological pressure. The small signals accumulate into an overwhelming force. Jung called this leaving energy, an invisible current that grows heavier and heavier. And paradoxically, the more they are hurt, the kinder empaths become. They give more, endure more, try harder to be the anchor for the other person. Outsiders may think they are fine, even happier. But inside, they are approaching the edge. It is like a dam cracking. The water's surface looks calm, but underneath, pressure builds, waiting for one fracture to explode. And then, the final stage arrives, the emergency cut. There is no dramatic argument, no cinematic breakup scene, only absolute silence. The unconscious flips the switch, survival mode activates. The empath leaves, no explanations, no negotiations, no way back. This is the moment when the unconscious acts like a surgeon, cold, precise, cutting away the necrotic part to preserve life. For the one left behind, the departure feels like lightning from a clear sky. They are stunned, asking why it happened so suddenly. But for the empath, it was never sudden. It was the outcome of months, even years, of ignored alarms. Jung affirmed, the unconscious does not care about promises or social rules. It only cares about survival. And once it takes action, the decision is final. These three stages form an irreversible path, from vague whispers to invisible pressure, to an explosion into permanent departure. To outsiders, it looks like a sudden disappearance. But in truth, it is a long process, one known only to the empath and their unconscious. Not all sensitive people disappear in the same way. Jung observed 4 clear patterns, like 4 psychological fingerprints, reflecting how the unconscious chooses the path to protect them. Some vanish like ghosts. One day they are there, still talking, still smiling, still caring. But the next morning, they are completely silent. No warning signs, no explanations. The ones left behind are stunned. We were fine. Why so sudden? In truth, the alarms had been ringing for a long time. No one listened. And when the unconscious reaches its limit, it cuts the cord instantly. Some fade away gradually. They don't leave in a single day, but over weeks, even months. Messages become less frequent. Their voice grows colder. Their care diminishes with time. There is no clear reason, only silence spreading like a slow sunset. Others think they are busy, or simply distant, until one day the silence becomes permanent. Some depart with a boundary explosion. They endure endlessly, suffering in silence for years, until one small act, seemingly insignificant, becomes the final drop. A single word, a look, a gesture, is enough for them to raise an iron wall. At first, they do not disappear, but they turn utterly cold, unreachable, and when that wall is tested once more, They leave this time forever, and some leave with calculation. They quietly choose the moment that will cause the least harm, sometimes leaving a few short lines, a vague farewell, no explosion, no drama, no wounds ripped open. Just a simple step away, protecting themselves in silence, leaving no cracks to be pulled back in. No matter how they disappear, they all share one truth. There is no negotiation, no turning back, no second chances. Once the unconscious has decided to leave, that door closes forever. Outsiders rarely understand. They are shocked, calling it cruelty. But for the sensitive, it is not cruelty. It is survival surgery. They do not leave to wound others. They leave to preserve the last piece of their soul. What haunted Jung was not that empaths leave, but the cold truth. They will never return. Not out of hatred, not to punish, but simply because returning is impossible. Jung called this a protective response of the unconscious. Once the mind has classified a relationship as deadly, dangerous, any attempt to reconnect is like placing a body that once suffered severe burns back into the fire. It triggers panic, depression, even total collapse. There are three main barriers that make the path back impossible. First is that the door of the unconscious has been locked. Once the protective mechanism is activated, the mind builds a permanent barrier. Like an immune system identifying an invader, it will never allow that intruder to re-enter. Second is the transformation that happens in the empty space. Time away becomes a process of recovery. Empaths regain energy, rebuild boundaries, discover new clarity. Returning would mean erasing all of that progress, like crawling back into an old skin that has already been shed. Third is the new awareness of truth. Once they have left, they see clearly the signs they once denied, the manipulation, the selfishness, the abuse. Returning now would be like willingly stepping back into the very trap they escaped, but this time with eyes wide open. For Jung, this was not cruelty. He called it psychological metamorphosis. Once you have shed your skin, you cannot return to the old shell. Those left behind are often desperate. They beg for one more chance, for an explanation. But the painful truth is that no explanation can make up for years of wounds. On the contrary, excuses only repeat the cycle of manipulation, the very reason the empath chose silence from the start. Think of yourself. Have you ever returned to a relationship you knew deep inside was unsafe? Did you feel your heart racing, your body resisting, as if your soul wanted to escape? In that moment, you understood you could not step back into the fire that once burned you. Once the unconscious has decided, the road back ceases to exist, and sometimes that finality is the only thing that can save you. Jung did not stop at describing disappearance. He wanted to find a way to help sensitive people avoid reaching that final breaking point, and he discovered an essential truth. Boundaries are the only shield that can save them. He began by teaching them to listen to unconscious signals, dreams, subtle sensations in the body, the emotional states after every interaction. If someone consistently leaves you drained, if in your dreams you are constantly being chased or trapped, it is not oversensitivity. It is the alarm system knocking on the door. Jung also advised trying small boundaries. A simple sentence, "I can't talk right now," and then observe the reaction. A respectful person will step back. A toxic person will get angry, sulk, or try to bend that limit. One small test is enough to reveal the true nature of the relationship. He emphasized the importance of tracking energy. Before and after seeing someone, ask yourself, do I feel full or empty? If every time you leave you feel heavier, that is no coincidence. That is spiritual bloodletting. The language of boundaries also matters. Jung taught that boundaries are not requests for permission, but declarations. They do not need long explanations. Only short and clear words, "I need more space. I will not take part in this." The more you justify, the more weapons you give to those who want to manipulate. And finally, he offered the standard for leaving. If someone consistently violates boundaries you've made clear, if they tighten their control whenever you defend yourself, if they use your compassion to force your surrender, that is the time to leave. No drama, no noise, just a quiet step away to protect your soul. These tools may sound small, but they are the difference between an empath forced to vanish in despair and an empath who chooses to leave consciously, calmly, without leaving deeper scars. Think of a relationship in your life. What have your dreams shown you? Is your body knocking a warning rhythm? And have you ever tried setting one small boundary, only to realize the reaction exposed the entire truth? Sometimes, a single no at the right moment can save you from years of pain and from a permanent disappearance. Jung did not only observe this phenomenon in the therapy room, he also recognized its traces in the lives of famous people, sensitive souls who struggled with their own empathy. In them, we see both tragedy and liberation. Virginia Woolf is a heartbreaking example. This brilliant writer possessed profound empathy, but that very sensitivity became her burden. In her journals and letters, she was often swept away by the emotions of others, to the point of losing herself. Jung would have called this state empathic overload. Woolf's tragic end is a warning. Without learning to set boundaries, sensitivity can turn into a destructive blade. In contrast to Woolf, Maya Angelou chose another path. She once said, "When someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time." That is the wisdom of the unconscious, transformed into conscious action. Instead of waiting until she had to disappear in pain, she chose to trust her intuition from the beginning. This is the difference between a passive empath and an empath who takes charge of their destiny. Carl Rogers, the famous psychologist known for his philosophy of empathy, also left us a great lesson. He listened deeply, but did not dissolve into the lives of others. He set clear boundaries. He could walk alongside, he could understand, but he would not disappear within. Jung would see this as proof that empathy only has real power when protected by the frame of boundaries. Eleanor Roosevelt offers another example. At first, she lived in the shadow of endurance, silent and patient in the role of wife. But then, she stepped out of that shadow and became an independent leader, using her sensitivity to fight for justice and community. She did not abandon empathy, she transformed it into strength. Jung called this empathic integration, when sensitivity is no longer a burden, but a weapon. These figures show us a truth. Empathy can be a curse, or it can be a gift. It all depends on whether you learn to set boundaries and listen to the voice of the unconscious. So look at yourself. Who do you resemble more? Are you falling into tragedy like Woolf? Do you trust your intuition as strongly as Maya Angelou? Are you learning to set boundaries like Carl Rogers? Or have you stepped into independent power like Eleanor Roosevelt? Because in the end, the difference between tragedy and greatness does not lie in the depth of sensitivity. It lies in how you use it. Even after understanding boundaries, many empaths still fall easily into invisible traps. Jung called them distorted mirrors of protection. They appear as strength, but in reality, they pull the sensitive back into cycles of suffering. The first trap is overreaction. After being hurt too many times by giving, some empaths swing 180 degrees. They build cold walls, refusing to connect with anyone. It sounds strong, but in truth, it is just another extreme. They avoid pain, but they also lose the connection their soul still longs for. As Jung warned, absolute detachment is not freedom. It is a new prison. The second trap is the spiral of guilt. Each time empaths try to set a boundary, the other person reacts with anger, sulking, or accusations. "You're so selfish. Why are you hurting me?" Because of their sensitivity, they feel guilty and retract their own boundaries. Thus, they become chained by their own compassion, falling into a subtle form of manipulation. The third trap is the addiction to explanation. Many empaths believe boundaries only hold value if fully justified. They write long messages, analyze every detail, trying to convince the other person to accept. But the more they explain, the more weapons they hand to those who want to argue, twist, and deny. In the end, they unintentionally weaken their own boundaries. The final trap is absolute isolation. Some, after too many wounds, withdraw from everyone. They no longer trust, locking themselves in silence. But Jung reminded us that empaths cannot live without connection. They need the right people, the right environment, not rejection of the entire world. The danger of these traps is that they look like armor, but in reality, they prevent empaths from living true to their essence. Sensitivity is not meant to be a burden. It only becomes one when misdirected. When placed in the right frame of boundaries, it reveals its true nature, a power to connect, to heal, and to create. Look at yourself. Which trap are you caught in? Are you being too cold to hide your wounds? Do you feel guilty each time you say no? Are you over-explaining? Or have you withdrawn completely into isolation? Only when you name the trap can you escape it. And escaping does not mean abandoning sensitivity. On the contrary, it is reclaiming it so that it is no longer a curse, but a gift. Jung believed that the journey of sensitive people is not only a story of personal survival, it is also part of humanity's psychological evolution. Every time an empath learns to set boundaries, the world around them is forced to change. Picture a group of friends. In the group, there is always one person who carries everyone's emotional weight, always enduring, always pleasing. Everyone has grown used to it, taking it for granted. But one day, that person begins to say, "I can't do this anymore. I need time for myself." Immediately, the group has to adapt. The mature ones will learn to take responsibility. The selfish ones will reveal their true faces. Jung called this the pressure of authenticity, the force that compels society to grow up. On a larger scale, empaths are the pioneers of emotional intelligence. They prove that sensitivity is not weakness. It only becomes a burden when there are no boundaries. But when protected, it transforms into a unique capacity, the ability to connect deeply, to heal, and to awaken empathy in the community. Jung believed that if more and more empaths learned to integrate their sensitivity, society would reach a tipping point of empathy, where emotional intelligence is no longer a rare privilege, but a common standard. Imagine a world where no is respected, where sensitivity is not exploited, where love and care do not equal self-destruction. That is the future empaths are quietly building. You may think you are just one small individual, but the truth is, every time you set a boundary, you are sending a message to society. Empathy must go hand in hand with respect, and that message has more influence than you realize. Look at your own life. When you say no firmly, what do others learn? When you protect your sensitivity, how do children and those around you begin to imitate? Do you see that such a small act can plant the seed of a more mature society? Empaths do not just leave to survive, they leave to pave the way. They turn their personal experience into a collective mirror, forcing the world to learn how to love without possession. Jung believed that these sensitive souls, though quiet, are guiding humanity toward a more mature stage, where love no longer means self-destruction, and empathy becomes the foundation of evolution. You've just walked with me through a long journey, from the alarm bells in dreams to the hidden crises, from the cold ways of disappearing to the reasons why there is no return. You have witnessed the tragedy of those without boundaries, and also the strength of those who know how to turn sensitivity into a weapon. Carl Jung left us with a truth. The silent disappearance of empaths is not cruelty, it is a surgery for survival. But he also showed us another path, a way where you no longer need to disappear. When you learn to listen to unconscious signals, to build small boundaries, to trust your intuition, and to choose a healthy environment, you are no longer a victim of sensitivity. You become its master. You don't need to hide in order to survive. You can stand tall, look straight ahead, and say, "This is me. These are my boundaries." And if you are listening to these final moments, make a vow to yourself. Write, "I protect my boundaries." Let those words live not only in the comments, but also be carved deeply into your mind. This journey does not end here. In the next video, I will show you how to transform sensitivity into a source of strategic power, a weapon no one can take from you. Remember, sensitivity is not a curse. It is a superpower. And from today, you will not use it to self-destruct, but to create. No longer a fear, but a strength. No longer a burden, but a light to guide your way.